College is a wild ride for young adults, and their mental health often suffers. This podcast addresses the inner battles many college students struggle with. You're listening to Normalize It Forward, where we have raw, unfiltered conversations about young people's biggest mental health problems, how to handle them, and how to achieve a more resilient mind. Time to get rid of those heavy burdens and focus more on self-love and care. Here is your host, Marc Lehman.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Normalize It Forward, the podcast that talks openly about mental health and wellness. I am so super excited today to welcome in DJ Nash. I'm going to intro DJ and then we will chat openly about lots of different things today. DJ is an individual after graduating Brown University, headed to Manhattan to begin his career doing stand-up. In 2000 was named the best new face at the Montreal Just for Laughs Comedy Festival, which led to a deal with CBS, where he co-created and starred in a CBS pilot, Life with David J., along with Elliot Gould. Nash has been writing and not acting ever since. In 2014, created and executive produced the NBC series, Growing Up Fisher. The show was based on Nash's childhood, growing up with a father who is blind and with parents who got divorced. The show featured the first visually impaired lead actor in a comedy series, as well as the first guide dog. In 2018, DJ produced and wrote an amazing show called A Million Little Things, and I have to say, by far and away, my favorite show. Love the saying that the show starts off with: friendship isn't a big thing, it's a million little things. If you haven't watched this show, please make the time. It's absolutely phenomenal. This show is loosely based on Nash's real life experiences. A Million Little Things is an hour-long dramedy which ran for 5 seasons on ABC and now is available on Hulu. A Million Little Things touched upon some really important topics: suicide, disability, divorce, the courage to come out in high school, sexual abuse, the weight of the coronavirus, and the tensions that arose from the death of George Floyd. A Million Little Things pushed us to reconsider how we treat each other. What an amazing, amazing topic. Because of A Million Little Things, DJ's become very involved with mental health in the mental health community, serving as an ambassador on Prevents, alongside the head of every branch of the armed forces on a presidential task force aimed at reducing the suicide rate among veterans. He's also very active with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention with Dee Hirsch in LA. Currently, DJ is developing a series for NBC and one for Hulu. He's also making a documentary called Joy about a survivor of child sexual assault and her inspiring story of resilience. DJ, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Wow, thank you so much. So cool. Those are all the things I did that seemed to work. We do the ones where I failed miserably. I could fill the whole hour.
You've done a lot. You've done a lot, and as I mentioned to you before we started chatting today, your show just amazing, absolutely amazing. I would just say, as a therapist, having worked with so many people with mental health issues, resonated deeply with me. And every single show, I'd turn to my wife and say, this is so well written and so well acted. Just an amazing show, really.
Well, I want to say a couple things. As a kid who had a severe learning disability, the idea that I could make a career out of writing, I think, surprises most of my teachers. And the idea that the writing and the execution of the show, the acting, spoke to you and resonated with someone who's had so much success in the mental health field, like, that's a really cool bar that I was hoping we could hit. I've lost a friend to suicide, and nothing will bring him back. But knowing that his story has helped other people means he didn't die in vain. And you know, when we talk about, I've learned I'm not a mental health expert, certainly am not now, but I'm more aware of things. There are these silver linings that happen around trauma, and the idea that I know you because of that show, that this relationships, started a couple weeks ago and continues today, and the other relationships like that I've had, and Alicia, who said that the show saved her life. There's people who I've met, and I want that for him, and I want that for me.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, such an amazing story, and for those that have been around people that have taken their own lives and been through that experience, it is such a painful ripple effect that just touches so many different people. And I work with a lot of college kids, and I often think, unfortunately, you'll hear about a story where this happens on a particular campus. And I often think about, what about all of those other kids on that campus? What about all of those kids that, even if they didn't know that person, they're a contemporary of that person, and just the fact that it's so permanent and so many kids out there are struggling that, I can't help but wonder, when they see, I just rewatched the first show, when they see, I won't spoil it for my listeners, but when they see Rome, in the middle of taking an overdose, and then, so beautifully written, but so amazing that he didn't tell anybody. He didn't tell anybody for a bit, and to hold that, it just makes you think, like, how many people out there, um,
Well, we got to be at least able to wreck the pilot, but or else we're not going to have anything to talk about. But I do love the fact that your head is blocking it, so it looks like it says Malise ward, but I'm
normalize
in the
it
Malise
forward. There we
ward.
go. Yeah.
But um, I started a stand-up comic, so I'm going to try to put
Yeah,
some
yeah.
good
No,
news
I
in this.
hear you.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
all, it's
yeah,
all
yeah,
good.
yeah. But I think the show came from this idea. The only thing I knew about the show at first was, wouldn't it be interesting if one friend is about to take his life when he gets a call from a second friend that a third friend took his life, and just the idea that a suicide prevented a suicide. I thought, oh, that's really interesting. I knew nothing about who they were, what they were going through, why they were in this crisis, what was going on. I just thought, oh, that's an interesting cold open. And then I spent time, this is sort of the writing side of this. I just spent time trying to figure out, like, why would someone be suffering? And I really wanted it not to be that people were suffering for financial reasons. I wanted it to, or at least that it didn't, that wasn't the most apparent thing.
Mhm.
If you watch the show, later in the series, you discovered that when Rome was going to take his life, it was the same day he got a Super Bowl ad. He was a commercial, and this is a huge day in his career. And I think part of what he was feeling was like, if even today I feel like this, am I ever going to get out of it? And so that process of finding different stories and finding different hurts really allowed me to base characters on different parts of my hurt. and,
And,
and was really cathartic. I mean, the director of the pilot, James Griffiths, who did just a beautiful job, he pointed out, he's like, your 4 characters on the show. And so if I go back and look at it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's true. And so it made it then easy to write because I could hide it. If my pain was hidden in a Korean American woman, you might not suspect it's me.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that backdrop, so I appreciate you sharing that. I'll also say I've never seen a show where I've uttered the words to my wife at the end of every episode. How about one more? And
Oof. Just to people who are listening,
how about one more?
max out at 2 a day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a
No,
lot, especially
I
the
would just
first
say,
season.
if
It's
you're
a
gonna
lot.
start, clear your schedule. It's an amazing show. But I want to just touch on something. The whole reason I created Normalize It Forward is I wanted to have an open dialogue with people about mental health. And you just said something so fascinating. I think with depression, a lot of people misunderstand what depression is. A lot of people misunderstand what it looks like and what it feels like. And, so many people, especially men, let's face it, we walk around with our masks on all day long, and, we're hiding it, and we're hiding how we feel. It's certainly not, I would say, an open acceptance for men to cry open. I was joke, like, when I ask a male in my office, when was the last time you cried? They're like, like 3 years ago. I ask a female, they're like, maybe 30 minutes ago.
In the elevator.
Exactly, on the way in here.
Yeah. I'm crying right now. Yeah.
It's just, that's the world we live in. And I think that as a result, especially for men, it is so, so hard to deal with those emotions that come up. And I think that really for my listeners to understand, especially parents of young people, that those emotions may be there and they might be hidden and they might not be talked about. And, someone looks at you and says, "Hey, DJ, how you doing?" You're like, "I'm fine." Yeah, it's a classic answer. "I'm
Oh
fine.
yeah, sure.
Everything's good." Right.
Rome's hiding it. Yeah, Rome's hiding it. Mhm.
Right. 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 So, I think,
Just to speak to that, because if you have parents listening,
yeah,
um, our tendency, I mean, I try to break this habit every second of parenting, is to solve and to fix. And when you have a teen who is dealing with depression, just knowing that it's a safe space to say, "I am hurting," is huge. That doesn't
totally
mean you have to solve the hurt, but just knowing that I can tell you I'm hurting and you're not going to think less of me as your child. If you
amazing.
provide that as a parent, if you go, "Hey, I just want you to know it's okay to not be okay. And I just want you to know maybe others differ with this. You don't want to burden your child, but if you want to say like, hey, I have hard days too. And I have some friends who've had really, really hard days. Tell me about it. What's going on?" But just to know that I can be your perfect kid that I'm trying to be with my grades and my sports and my theater, whatever it is that I'm doing, to know that I don't get demoted in your mind because I'm hurting the same way I wouldn't be demoted because I broke my arm.
Right.
But
Right.
to know that is so big.
My God, that's huge, DJ. And I think what a great tip for parents, because I always joke, I'm like, we were given 2 ears, listen to your kids. Try to hear what they're saying when they're not talking, and paying attention and giving them that unconditional, I'm here for you, no matter what you throw at me, no matter what you have to say, no matter how you're feeling. It's okay. It's totally okay.
I'm going to just wreck some episodes because I think the
Yeah,
work we're doing
good.
here is more important than plot stuff. Because even if you know the story, you're still going to love it, guys.
Yeah,
But
I
here's
agree.
what I'll say. One of my favorite scenes in our entire series, John died by suicide in the pilot. His daughter, Sophie, is struggling, A, because she lost her dad, and B, because in the series, she becomes a survivor of sexual assault. And um, she's hurting. And she finds out that there's another student who was assaulted, and she wants to meet that student. But then she finds out that student died by suicide. And the fact that the same thing happened to Sophie that happened to this young woman, and the fact that this woman died by suicide the way her dad did, really makes her start to spiral and wonder, is this my fate? And is this, in a is this my destiny in a Star Wars way? Like really is like there's a lot to carry. And so she goes to Rome, who almost took his life in the pilot, and who everyone is aware of the story, and probably because of their dynamics of Rome stepping up as her surrogate dad in a lot of ways. She may not have felt like, "I can talk to you about your dark days," but she's really curious. So she knocks on the door on his, this is the scene. She knocks on his door, and he's delightfully surprised, but surprised to see her there. And he's trying to figure out, as we all would, if someone, if our teenage kid's friend shows up at our house, what's going on? And I need to ask you something, and he, anything, whatever. And she says, "What made you think you wanted to do it?" And he suddenly realizes, oh, we're talking about this.
Yeah.
And as much as Rome might share, he's also aware, I'm an adult sharing to, um, I'm aware of the power dynamic, and I realize you're not just asking for a book report. There's something going on. And so he has to be careful in how he answers. And she explains, what's going on. And his closing line, and Romany Malco, I love you, dude. You're probably not listening to this because you have your own podcast and stuff. But someone listening to this, the next time you run into Romany, stop him and say, "Hey, I heard DJ Nash on a podcast, and he said he loved you for this." But he had this line that we did, and he just delivered it so beautifully. And he says to her at the end, and he tells her why it doesn't necessarily mean you've been predisposed to some things, but that doesn't mean, and there's help and there's support, and we're so much more aware, and we're talking about it as a friend group in a way that John, and we didn't do that. So you're set up to succeed. But he said, if you're ever feeling that way, don't knock on my door. And the audience, for a moment, I'm sure you were like, what
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he goes, you knocked my door down.
Yeah.
And like, that is the thing to anyone who's struggling and listening, anybody who's like, I've struggled and listened. I'm not about the listening part, but I've struggled and I've been in pain. I've been in pain so great that I think I can't bear this pain. I have helped people who have been in pain that is so great they cannot bear this pain. You call someone and you tell them what you're feeling. And if you need to call 988, that's cool. These people have been trained to that. They are honored to be there. If you need to call, tell a teacher, if you can tell your parent, if you can tell your sibling, if you can tell a friend, just tell someone. The mere process of telling someone will make you feel not alone.
Yeah. Just amazing advice. I mean, I think,
For a stand-up comedian, for sure, right? I mean, like,
well,
you know, right? Somebody, you know, that's pretty good for
amazing
Jim
advice.
Gaffigan's giving out that advice. Jim, are you giving out that advice?
I think that it's it's such a strange place for a young person to be when they're feeling that way. And it's as a therapist, I realize it doesn't go from today Tuesday everything's great, tomorrow Wednesday everything's shit. It's a slow decline. And there's a lot of opportunity, as you said, to reach out to someone and to take that leap and to say, hey, I don't even know how to say this, but I feel awful. You know what I mean? And I don't even know what it is. It doesn't have to come off eloquent. It doesn't have to even be said. If you want, as a young person, to text an adult, do it. Doesn't matter. Because like you said, DJ, once you take that step to tell somebody, now you're not alone. You've also created a safety net for yourself. And I think the concern of, self-harm does decrease as a result of that. Probably a good segue into.
Well, before we segue, one more thing I want to say. And I say,
please.
anytime I talk to a mental health specialist, when I'm on a podcast or on a panel, I ask this question, and I know how you're going to answer, even though you haven't answered, which is asking someone if they're thinking about hurting themselves. Does that make them more inclined to hurt themselves?
No, it doesn't. And I think that whenever I've done it, and I've done it a lot, to assess safety, it is 10 times out of 10 received well by the person, because the message is, this person cares. This person cares enough to ask me, have you been thinking about hurting yourself? Is this something that you've considered? Do you have a plan? It doesn't make a person think about it more, because quite frankly, they're already thinking about it a whole bunch.
There's three groups of people. There are people who weren't thinking about it, who you ask, and they're like, what? No. And they brush it off because they weren't thinking about it. There are people who were thinking about it and were hoping someone asked. That's who you desperately want to get to. And then there's the people who are thinking about it and didn't think it showed. And the mere fact that you've given them a safe space to feel that way is everything.
Oh my God. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I consider myself really lucky in my office, in my space. I create that environment for young people. And, whether it be, as we, over my 25 years of doing this, I've developed more, obviously technology is developed as well, but I've developed more ability to see people online. And so there's times where I'll see a student and they're in their room in University of Alaska somewhere, and far off, and they're able to share this stuff. And I've had plenty of kids over the years look at me and say, I've never told anybody this, and that to me is an honor for them to share that. Is amazing.
Yeah.
And,
and with that, there's a school in my area, and they have had 4 suicides in the last 2 years. And it's just tragic. I mean, like, it guts me. And to the other parents of that, I actually did a podcast. One of my podcasts was how to talk to your kids about this. Are you thinking of, like, I had Dr. Barbara Van Dalen, who was my consultant on the show. We talked about it. But if you're in a situation where someone has taken their life and you're worried about your friend or your child or your partner or whomever, that is the perfect opportunity to talk about it, because it's on the table. And hey, how are you doing? How does this make you feel? Have you ever thought about that? So, like, talking about it is unbelievably helpful. And I have never I haven't been doing this like you have, but I certainly am surrounded by suicide a lot in the last 6 years. I've never found someone was like, how dare you talk to me about this? I've only met people who, especially with the pandemic, everyone is dying to connect. And
Yeah.
if you look at someone and you notice them and they're seen, people appreciate being seen.
But isn't that interesting? All the people you've talked to, not one person has responded poorly. Think about that, right? I mean, that's really interesting to me.
And I have used, I've called someone and go like, look, maybe it's because I lost my friend because I'm doing the show, but that last call, I was just a little worried. Are you okay? I've like you could
Yeah.
say, oh, I heard a podcast and the guy said I should do like use me as the excuse, use you as the excuse, like whatever the thing is, that is so much better than the feeling I had when I was supposed to have lunch with my friend the next week and he took his life.
Yeah.
And I wasn't aware he was suffering. Um, and so I would want no one to be in that situation ever.
So glad you said that, because I think a lot of parents, DJ, I don't know how old your kids are, but a lot of parents, as they approach pubescent years, they're nervous to talk about sex and body parts and this, that, and the other thing. And I talk about everything because I do it in my office, right? But it's, suicide is one of those topics that's so hard for parents to talk about sometimes. And I love how you said that. And I think it's so, so accurate. If a person recognizes, I'm going to be temporarily anxious about throwing this word out of safety or suicide or depression, that is nothing compared to losing a significant other or a child or a friend or anybody else.
Yeah.
Not even close.
I mean, yes. Hey, I know high school's tough, and even all these years later, I remember it. If you're ever feeling down in a way that you need to talk about, know that I'm here to listen, and then you can move on. You
Right.
can. You can do
Right.
that as you're dropping off laundry. Like that's okay, but you set the table for it.
Yeah.
I have walked with. I do this American Foundation for Suicide Prevention walk. I'm doing it Saturday. I have walked with 1,000 people on Saturday will get together at a park in Pasadena, California, and every single one of them will have been touched by suicide directly. And
Amazing.
they wear different beads necklaces, and the colors of the necklaces mean I lost a child to suicide or I lost a parent to suicide. Green means you've had an attempt or you yourself are struggling. And you meet all these people and you realize you're not alone. It's a group you would never want to belong to, but they couldn't be more welcoming. And I think just the power, to parents out there, I don't want you walking for your kid. I don't want you walking for your kid. If you are walking for your kid, don't walk alone.
Yeah. 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 I did the walk last year here in Southern Connecticut and had the exact same response, and really, really powerful. Met some amazing, amazing people. And all of what you just said, all of those messages are so 100% true for everybody. So parents out there, I mean, really listen, really heed our advice. We've been around it. We've been through it. DJ lost a close friend. I'm sure this show brought many, many people and their stories right to your world. And I can only say this. One of the things that made me so happy when I started this podcast, just a few months ago, is I got an email from a mom, and she said to me, I listened to your show in the car with my 15-year-old, and it allowed me to talk about hard topics. And I'm like, done. That is the reason I have this podcast. So parents,
Can I tell you a similar,
please.
that story, you affected a certain amount of people and that happened, like to use your platform in that way. So I lost my friend to suicide. I was just writing my story. And then I found that me and the other writers were telling all of our stories. So in I think it's the middle of season 2, no, in season 1, Delilah finally gets this blue envelope. So spoiler if you're wondering what happens to her, but she gets the blue envelope. And so John's suicide note is there. And I was very purposeful because of the great advice I got from Dr. B, our consultant, that a person who dies doesn't get to speak from the dead. So I couldn't do flashbacks I had to be really careful because you don't want to send a message that you can kill yourself and still be part of life, because you can't, you're dead. So I knew I had this one note, and Ron Livingston, who played John, was very generous enough to do the note. There's a whole backstory there, but we don't have time for it. But he spent a lot of time in this note, and the episode aired, and it coincidentally aired the day I was finished with the season writing. So I actually had a lot more time, and I got an email from our publicity person saying, "Hey, you're about to get an email I'm forwarding to you. It's really sensitive. Just want to make sure you're in a good headspace when you read it." So, I'm bracing myself. And it's from a mom. And she had lost her son to suicide 37 days before, a month and a week before. She had watched our show, and then her son took his life. She stopped watching, and then she returned to the show because she was hoping watching the friends grieve the loss of John would help give her closure. The letter was heartbreaking. It was like just a parent's worst nightmare. And she wanted a copy of our note, which is a note that I wrote and that Dr. Barber reviewed. Like, this is a fictional, it's not real, like, that's not real people. I love that people felt they were real, but they're not. And so I called Dr. Barber and I was like, "Hey, this mom, like, she's hurting." And she said, "I'll tell you what to do. You should call American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They have local chapters and the people meet regionally." And so I called up. This is the part where, because the season was over, I had some time. So I was like, "I want to give this woman a phone number. I want to give her a name." So I called up. I was like, "Hi, I'm DJ Nash. I have a show on ABC called A Million Little Things." And she said, "Oh, I know exactly who you are," which for the kid who struck out a kickball was super cool. I mean, but also, like, it meant the mental health
Still funny,
community.
DJ. You're still funny.
But the mental health community had supported the show. And of course, so it was great. So she said, "What's going on?" I told her, and she said, "Can you call me back in 5 minutes?" I called her back 5 minutes later. She put me in touch with a mom who had lost her son to suicide 7 years before. Those two women had coffee on me. And if our show did nothing else but bring those two moms together,
Amazing.
it was enough.
Amazing.
It was. I mean, even all these years later, the picture of the two of them at coffee was on the wall of the writers' room for the remainder of the series. It's on my phone under my favorites. Like, it unexpected gift.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And look, there's people out there that are hurting, and it's suicide is such a hard topic. You and I could talk about it for hours and hours and hours. I think there's many stories of people that have unfortunately been touched by it. And let me ask you this, DJ, because I work with a lot of young people, and I try to ask this question at each of my podcasts because I'm always curious your viewpoint. Kind of a big question, but the statistics for young people, they're bad. They're not good. The amount of anxiety, the amount of depression, the amount of suicidal behavior and attempts. Suicide is now the second leading cause of death in young people. And that's reported. It's probably more like the first. And that's grown. That's grown in the last 10 years. It used to be number 12. Now it's number 2. And obviously there is a tremendous amount more stress and a lot more laid upon things for young people. But I'm curious, when you think about that and you put yourself in the shoes of a young person, whether high school or college, what are your thoughts? What advice would you offer to a young person who's hurting?
It's a really good question. And I'm comfortable enough on this to tell you that I probably should have made it out of high school. It's only by the grace of God that I'm here. So, what would I tell myself then is really your question. Yeah. Tell someone, and ideally someone who can hear it. Yeah. I mean, here's what I would tell them. There's this famous story, I'm sure you know it, the guy who jumped and survived the jump off the bridge. And I think I'm going to get the statistics of the numbers wrong, but they're close enough. But of 100 people who jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, 10% survive, and 100% of them, as soon as they jumped, wish they hadn't jumped. It will pass. There is no question that it hurts. It hurts so bad. And it feels like no one cares, and it feels like it won't end. I talked to my dear buddy, Gary Gulman, who is a hilarious stand-up comedy. Gary's amazing, and he went through a lot. He did the special, The Great Depression. And I remember he said this because my son and I came to watch his show, and he was like, "Hey, tell your son." He said, "I wish I could tell myself, if I could tell 15-year-old me that one day someone I'm so sexually attracted to is going to walk by me naked in the bedroom, but I'm going to be so busy reading my book that I don't even look up." But it really is like, Like, is this going to matter in 5 minutes? Is this going to matter in a year? Is this going to matter? Like all of that stuff, it passes, which doesn't mean it's not going to get shitty again, but then it's going to pass again. Like you live in Connecticut, it's that weather. Like there
Right.
are sunny days, there are rainy days, there are snow days, there are unexpected days where you bring an umbrella and it's a clear day, and days where you don't and it pours, but it passes. And there is more good than there's bad.
Listen, I so appreciate your honesty. You know, I don't know if you realize this or not, by sharing what you share, even about you, you connect with people out there. You let people know that they're not alone. You let people know that, you know, beyond cliches, you let people know that are listening to this and watching this, that what they're experiencing is not unique. As a matter of fact, statistically, it's actually the majority of young people that are experiencing shitty things, you know, anxiety, depression, you name it. And so your thoughts on this, DJ, are so appreciated. And I just want you to know, like, it means a lot. It means a lot for people to hear you talk so openly and honest about this. Really does.
Well, I appreciate that. Like I have found this incredible community, you know, and during the pandemic, everything that triggers depression, loneliness, fear of health,
Yeah.
isolation, money issue, any of those things
Right.
were
Right.
all. I heard this from the Surgeon General because I was on this committee with all these like, like little couldn't had to go to special kid, sixth grade English class kid was on a committee with the Surgeon General. And he said, every one of these issues is exacerbated by the pandemic.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we have teens, and we had 8-year-old, like my kids were, who we were afraid we were going to die.
Right.
It wasn't like,
right.
and it wasn't lava.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
it wasn't like the boogeyman. Like there wasn't something that you could go like, oh, you just saw that movie Sixth Sense and it scared you. Like this was real shit.
Right.
Like wear a mask. We didn't know. Like we didn't know. Like, am I gonna like people were they had so many people dying they couldn't hold them in.
That's
like,
right.
There were driveways and garage. Like so, what is normally a unjustifiable anxiety was a very justifiable anxiety.
Absolutely.
And you don't just turn that off.
No.
That's still there.
No.
And we still, you know, my kids lost 2 years of education. They're smart kids. They'll now, maybe I won't seem dumb so soon in their life, but they also lost 2 years of social skills and 2 years of interacting and navigating fights and flirting with people and whatever those things are.
All of that.
All of it. So, you know, one thing I always ask people when I speak somewhere, I just did it this week. I asked, who's a good friend? You know, and I say, show of hands, who's a good friend? And pretty much everyone raises their hand. Who's a good friend to themselves?
Great
and
question.
you get like half.
Yeah.
And why not? Why are you not like, first of all, just, you should be a good friend of yourself only because your friends need you as a friend.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
But
yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a huge point. And, you know, the other thing that, you know, I noticed in spades during COVID was certainly all that loss, but there was a point where our hope, right, of like future things was like teeter-tottering. We weren't sure, we weren't hopeful anymore, you know, and kids weren't sure what 6 months from now or a year from now was going to look like. Thankfully, a lot of that's been restored. But to your point, I think that when we all went through that, I think the majority of people were feeling those depressive symptoms. I think the majority of people were feeling cooped up and anxious and isolated and maybe even a little angry at not being able to do things, right? And so, you know, since then, there's a lot of individuals that have still continued on that path. And you know,
it's very easy to like go, I'm not gonna go to that party.
Right.
Like, you know, it's easy to skip something because we were justified before.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And so those patterns, whether it's adults or whether it's young kids, those patterns continue. And so, you know, to me, I love what you said about being a good friend to yourself and really just being good to yourself. We as human beings, we need to socialize. We as human beings, we need to, you know, do certain things to stay healthy, right? Our doctors remind us of that all the time. And, you know, as you said, we can blow those things off, or we can do those things. But really stopping and thinking about what puts a smile on my face, that's kind of where it's at, right? And
Yeah, I'll admit to you, because of being a showrunner and running a show and writing some other things and being a dad and a husband and all of these, like I say them like they're all burdens, they're all delightful opportunities I have and places I spend my time. But because they're all there, I always feel like I'm letting someone down and doing something. So in order for me to go out to dinner with a friend, that friend usually needs to either be another writer because I want to ask them about this idea, or they need a favor for the amount of times I've gone out to dinner with a friend because I wanted to go and I need a night for myself. Why am I not doing that? And those moments where you fill your own bucket and you recharge, we have to do that. And if that's usually my New Year's resolution to myself, is to like live life the way I want to, not the way I ought to. But like, why aren't we doing those things? And we have those opportunities. I have a silly, this is like ridiculously silly and stupid. And so if someone is listening to this and meets me one day, you can say to me, how are your feet? But like, I don't just put cream on my feet before I put my socks on. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to have cracked feet. I'm doing this. And what's it take? 35 seconds to really lotion those feet. And every day now I lotion my feet. I'm like, you're doing this for you, buddy. They can wait. Just the simple task of like, I'm putting lotion on my feet before the sock. Like that's
you heard it, guys. Anyone who meets DJ, ask him about his feet.
Yeah, ask me. Okay, let's see those. Let's see are they cracked? If your heels are cracked, man, you're not a good friend to yourself.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. You referenced Gary before. I
Oh,
still laugh. I mean, he has so many funny things, but I still laugh when he goes through his JCC stick.
Oh my God.
Oh my!
You never know, Gary. You never know.
Yeah,
We know, Mom. We know.
Hysterical, just hysterical.
We still, that's a phrase we say around the house. You never know, Gary. Like, like there's certain things that have come from my friends who are like, I have a bunch of friends who were really successful comics who kept doing it. And Gary's one of them. Like, oh, you never know, Gary. You never know. I want to ask you this because you were so generous. Truly, among the things as a show you liked, it seems like you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So what storyline in particular spoke to you?
It's a really good question. There were so many, really. There was so many. I think that in the first show, that scene that I described with Rome really spoke to me. I think as a male, and just that sense of when's he gonna tell people like what happened. You know, that really resonated with me a lot. And that notion of you know, as a therapist. Forgive me, I can't remember all of the characters' names.
It's okay. Yeah. Either can I.
As a therapist, when she was sick,
Maggie.
It really resonated because, you know, we're human beings too, and we're taking on lots of issues that come our way in our office, but there's shit that comes up for us too all the time. And so, you know, it spoke to me around the concept of really everybody should be seeing somebody at some point in their world, you know, and dealing their own issues. And you know, and Gary's character, I don't know what I could say. I mean, I love Gary's character, just amazing. An amazing human being. The surprise factor of, you know, his sarcasm and then his mix between that and his care and concern for people was just awesome.
Just to tell you two quick stories. When I met with James Roday Rodriguez played Gary beautifully. I had talked to his agent and he's like, you got to meet James. And I will tell you candidly, I had never watched Psych. So I knew his face and had seen this. I just didn't know him. And honestly, as was true of all the characters, all the actors, I didn't care how you were in something else. I care how you are in this.
Sure.
So I knew that Gary was like the key, because if he can deliver a joke, we have a series. If he can't, it's just really sad. It's just a sad sack of shit. So I said to his agent, he's going to have to read with me. And he's like, oh, he'll read. I'm like, I know, but he's a big actor. And like, I just need you to tell him ahead of time. I don't want it to be awkward. But he'll read. So he comes into this meeting. He's wearing gym shorts, a t-shirt that definitely he didn't pull out of the drawer today. He's wearing black socks and sliders. And I remember the name of the sliders because he bought me a pair, because I referenced this a lot. So I go into the, hey, James is here. I walk out to meet him, bring him back. And I'm like, okay, so not sending a signal that he wants this gig. You know what I mean? Like, are those your best sliders? You know, they were, by the way. So he comes back and he said, "Say, I read the script. I really loved it," which, you know, that's very kind. And so, and I could tell it affected him. And I said, "Oh, well, that's really nice." And I told him the story. I had this friend, and I was in a bad place myself. I was really feeling down, and I was walking one day at lunch just to psych myself up to go back to work in the afternoon. And I ran into a buddy of mine, and he was also in a bad place, but we both lit up. And I'm like, dude, we should have lunch. Totally. And it wasn't like an LABS thing. We meant it. And he said, "I'm really busy this week. How about next week?" I'm like, "Yes, but we're doing it." And he killed himself. And James looks at me and he goes, "Wow, he really didn't want to have lunch with you, did he?" like unbelievable. It is as inappropriate as it is funny, right?
No, but that sounds like his character.
It's Gary.
Like,
It's Gary. I
that's
said to him, "Dude, like, we just met. That's Gary." Like I said, like, "Dude, if you can do that, because I'm gonna write you that. But if you can deliver that, we have a series." And so, you know, the daughter's playing guitar for her dad. If she plays something by Bruno Mars, I'm going to burn this place down. And then it became this really fun thing because James and I, like this, talking to him many times a week is probably the thing about the show I miss the most, because I just love him. I love him. And so I was pretty much a stickler that we need to get it as written. You can surprise me with alternate takes, but I need it as written. So one week I was watching the daily, I'm watching a cut. So the editor assembles the director's cut, the director does a quick pass, and then I'm looking at what the show is that we're making. And it's the episode where it's Theo's birthday. And I think it's Gary leaves the party because he has to go give the dog back or something like that, something in that vein. And as he leaves this kid's birthday party, by the door are the goodie bags, which someone from props just put, because you'd have that there. It's never in a script. It was not like the people on our crew were so attentive that that's a detail they had it. And he just grabs 3 bags and leaves, which obviously is going to cause a problem because you have exactly as many as the, like, but he needed 3 good and plenties or whatever. Like, it was so funny. So I call him up like, "Dude, that's incredible." And then we were doing an episode, and I'll be vague because I don't want to wreck stuff, but there's a point in the series where Gary's going through some really rough stuff and he just doesn't want to be treated differently. He really, really doesn't want to be treated differently. And he yells at the whole friend group in a loving way because it's his turn, because we sometimes do that. And the group sort of disperses to, someone broke a glass, someone goes to clean it up, and now he's alone with his good buddy Rome. And Gary's been battling breast cancer for the last 18 months of his life. You know, he's got, and Rome's been battling depression. They have 2 guys with diseases, and Gary shares that he's scared, that he is scared, that when you beat cancer, you don't believe you've beat it forever. You think, "I beat it until the next screening," or, you know, so a lot of stuff that he said in the pilot has come back for him. And Rome says, and he's yelled at everyone, "Do not treat me differently. I don't want to be treated differently." And Rome says, "This is not me treating you differently." And he gives Gary a hug, which, like, 2 bros hugging in a show, and it's an earned moment. Like, I directed the episode, and we started with Romney's coverage, meaning the camera is on Rome's face. We're shooting over Gary's back to Rome's face, and he hugs, and we're in the scene. And I don't yell cut because I think maybe something magical will happen. It doesn't. So I yell cut, and there's just this, and I think they even joke like, DJ just wants his hug in as long as possible or something like that. So I yell cut, and I had often did this. I did it a lot in the pilot, and I can tell moments, but I sometimes change things and only tell one actor. So the courtesy I do is I tell the other actor, "Something's different this time. Stay in it." Okay. So I said that to Romney, and I pulled James aside, who I love both these guys. Can, like, you give them a joke, they'll hit it out of the park. And I said, "James, next take, I'm not going to yell cut. When you feel it's right, say this." And I whispered in his ear, and he's like, "Oh my God. Okay. We do the scene, and I'm really scared. Rome says, "This is not me treating you differently." And he gives his friend a hug, and we stay in it. Like, we're in it. And on Rome's coverage, you hear Gary say to him, "Correct me if I'm wrong, but did your penis just touch my penis?" And everyone on set, I go, "Cut, that's awesome." And they go, we're not using that, right? Like, no, we're totally using it. That's what friends are. Like, that's it.
right.
That's
That's
what you
right.
do.
That's
That's
right.
what you do. And I had the great pleasure, like the privilege. I knew what the finale of our series was going to be when I pitched the pilot. I just knew the story, and I kept it from a lot of people along the way. I let people in who needed to know because it affected how they were playing certain parts. But I said to James, "You want to write the finale with me?" And he was like, "Dude, you already know what it is." I'm like, "Yeah, I do, but we're going to make it better if we write it together." And he was like, "Well, I only want to write it with you if it turns out exactly the way you want it to." And I'm like, "Yes, me too." That's exactly how I want it. Okay, great. I'm so glad we got that cleared up. And we wrote this finale together, and 85% of it is stuff I knew. 15%, the things that you would point out and go, "Oh my God, I love that moment," James wrote. And
Really?
it was so fun to do it together because, he had to do a lot of things physically as an actor to get ready for the finale. And I was directing the finale. And I mean, we were both in the back seat as Rome and Eddie were doing that scene about where are we going to get the drugs.
Yep.
And those two dudes who are really funny were never funnier than in that. Like, it was so funny. So like, that's my girl. Why is she your girl? But oh my goodness, like the honor of working with 12 actors who were even kinder off camera than their characters were on camera. If I asked them to show up, like Allison, who played Maggie, James, who played Gary, we were done with Maggie's wig. And I said, let's fly and give it to a woman with breast cancer. And they did. We flew and we gave, like I asked them to show up to a mental health thing. Yeah, where are we going? Like, even after the series ended, Romany flew halfway across the country to do it. Like as you watch our series, and I hope you do, they are as kind as you hope they are. Every single one of them.
I can only say I've met Stephanie.
Stephanie's great. Stephanie's great. Who plays Delilah? Yes.
Sweetheart. Yeah. And if they're half as kind as her, I get it. I mean, these are special human beings, and your show was beyond amazing. I could sit and say to you and blow smoke at you. It meant a lot to me because of the topics. And I think that it gives people opportunity to talk about things that they're not talking about. And, I think that one show after the next, there's something you can take from every show. And it could be a bit about a character, it could be a bit about a topic. I often find myself saying to parents, have you asked your kids what it's like to be a high schooler now? Have those conversations, because these are topics that you wrote about in your show. And these are topics that are happening in real life, in people's worlds, and they're not getting talked about. So I thank you, number one, for bringing the show to the public. It's just, it's a gift for everybody. Again, if you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's amazing. And number
make sure
two,
you're watching the pilot. Make sure you're watching the pilot when you're in a good place, because
I agree.
There's a suicide in the pilot, and so make sure you're taking care of yourself. And any episodes that are particularly potentially triggering have warnings in front of them. Yep. But that first episode is a lot.
I appreciate you saying that. It is, and it can be triggering. So I totally agree with what you're saying. But again, the topics amazing, the actors and actresses amazing. I think taking this next step and having this conversation and really letting parents out there know and letting young adults out there know just how important all of these conversations can be at times. They're life changing, they're life saving. Trina from Give an Hour, excuse me, who Stephanie introduced me to, I recently interviewed. She used the phrase suicide protection. And I like that. I think that's a good phrase. And I think suicide protection is all about being there and asking a hard question if you need to a friend. As a guy, if you got to throw a bro in there to do it, I don't give a shit. Throw a bro in there. Hey, bro, how you doing? What's up? Are you okay? Like, I'm concerned about you. Ask the question.
So when I don't know whether we have to wrap up or how you are.
We got time. We got time.
Okay. So when I the year before I had a pilot that did not go to series, and I actually think it paved the way for A Million Little Things. If I hadn't done that pilot, I wouldn't have been able to make A Million Little Things, and we can get into that if you want. The reason I'm mentioning that is when you have a pilot that is finished but hasn't been decided on yet by the network, it's it's like in pilot purgatory. You're not supposed to show it to anyone. And in fact, there's just like a famous story of a network president finding out that someone showed the pilot, and so then they didn't pick up the pilot out of spite.
Wow.
So the year before, I had a pilot that I really believed in. It was actually the storyline between Rome and Walter in the last season was primarily based on this series. It was, anyway, I didn't show it to people, and then the pilot didn't go forward. And I was like, I don't want to pull all my friends together for a failed pilot. That's super sad. So when A Million Little Things was in pilot purgatory, I said to 8 couples that I'm really friends with, some of whom influenced the relationships on the show, I said, hey, I have a home movie I want to show you. You want to come over and see it? So 18 people, my wife and I and our 8 couples, sat in our living room and we watched the pilot to A Million Little Things. Mm-hmm. And when the pilot was over, the women got up and started talking. The men just sat there. And I remember so clearly my friend, I won't say his name for privacy purposes, or he's probably so vain, he wants me to say, you want me to. No. Anyway, he said, oh my God, I feel like that all the time. And I've never told anyone.
Wow.
And we just sat there and he was like, so when I pitched the show, there was a concern, would women watch it? When we tested the show, not a single woman dropped out. And the reason they didn't drop out is, as said in the testing, was it gave us a chance to see a side of men we don't normally get to see. I think for my friend, it was like, you're being honest about feelings we have that we haven't really shared. And when their friend dies, it is just the kick in the pants that the group needs to finally be honest about things that are going on. Their friend's death becomes this catalyst. This is not a show about one friend dying. A Million Little Things is a series about 7 friends finally living.
I love that. I love that. And in putting together, your intro, A Million Little Things pushed us to reconsider how we treat each other.
You wrote that, right?
I did not write that. I can't.
Where is that? Because I was like,
Google wrote that. I don't know who wrote that. I grabbed it from somewhere on the internet.
Oh my God! Because I was like, that's not my normal bio, but I love it. Yeah,
that is your show. That is your show. Like it's and that's the gift. I think the gift of us all remembering how important that is, because there's always something else to run to. There's always something else to choose to do, but nothing should be more important than the safety of anybody we know. And sometimes it's just spending a few extra minutes. Sometimes, it's putting cream on our feet, and
yes,
making ourselves comfortable. But just really and truly like recognizing, hey, just because I'm happy today doesn't mean other people are. And you know what? If I truly care about other people, I better let them know that.
Yeah. Because you may not have the chance. And I don't want to be in that negative place of it could change tomorrow, but it could change tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's people who have said they didn't take their life because someone said hi to them as they were walking by. I say hi to everybody. It's really a problem. It's really a problem. My wife's like, come on, stop. We got to go places.
Right.
Yeah. That's a real thing.
Yeah. So it's I think it's just an immensely powerful message, and I'm hoping people walk away after listening to this remembering that, at least for a few days, hopefully longer, but really realizing in our daily travels, sometimes all it takes is a hello, right?
That is Gary's, I don't want to wreck for the pilot, but Gary's big speech is we're going to do this for 3 weeks and then we're going to be back doing the same shit we always do. Like that is the challenge that he puts to the group.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge you're putting to us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the gift, DJ. Honestly, it was amazing. I'm so excited to see your next show. I know they're in development, and I know you'll let us know when they're out. We certainly, I'm a huge fan. I know many people out there are huge fans of your work, and certainly A Million Little Things and everything it brought to us. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. Have people check out the show. And I don't know if you did this, I have a podcast, A Million Little Stories, and we often went through episodes as it's happening. So they're numbered so you can follow along. And
I
you
listen.
can me. Yeah.
I listened to your two show with Gary. It was fantastic.
Oh my God, Gary's, I
Gary
love that too. Love that too.
Fantastic.
Yeah, people can reach me through the website too if they want to reach out with a question or an idea or something like that.
What's your website, TJ?
millionlittlestories.com. There's a place to ask DJ a question, I think, and it comes. But my assistant is very good about getting it to me right away. I'm very bad about responding right away, but I do respond all the time. And I've met some incredible people through it. So.
Look, you walk the walk and talk the talk, and you put yourself out there. You're a helper, you're a kind person, and you're a human being. So thank you for all of those things. Thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is really fun. This was fun. Like, it was cool to get different questions. I like it. Yeah.
And if I'm ever out in California, I'll call you. We'll have dinner just because.
Let's do it. I don't know about dinner because that's like usually family time, and I have to put my cream out for
lunch. Lunch.
Yeah, a good lunch. I'm a good lunch guy.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks again, DJ.
Be well. And if you see Stephanie before I do, tell her I love her.
I will. I definitely will. Thanks again.
Stephanie's probably listening. Love
she
you.
Might be. You never know.
Okay. Bye.
See you, DJ.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
That's all for this episode of Normalize It Forward. May this conversation serve as a reminder that you are never alone in facing your mental health struggles. There are always people who can help. To dive even deeper into our journey of normalizing one of the biggest issues young people face, check out more episodes of the show at youareheard.com. It's UAREHEARD.com. Continue gaining access to the right tools, the best resources, and the most insightful advice to achieve positivity, mindfulness, and genuine happiness.